Hello and welcome to another Nimble video tutorial. So this is my 50th video. It's going to be a little bit more technical. I'm going to look at some code here with you, talk you through some of my ideas, and walk you through a concept of what I built this weekend. So basically when you make any kind of web app, it's really only, I guess I like to simplify it. There's only two kinds of web apps. It's the ones that display data, static pages, and they display data, or the ones that collect data. So when you make a data collection app, there's a variety of different tools that people use, but what I come to find out is what Nimble was missing was a good grid control. So I scoured the web, looked for some grid controls, and there were a few that caught my eye. However, I noticed the licensing cost for some of these grid controls is really high. So the license this particular AG grid is like $500, which if you've looked at the price of Nimble, that's almost 4 times the price of what it costs for a full rendering operating system. So I didn't get discouraged because I knew when I'm using the nimbleJS, I'm probably using one of the most powerful frameworks that's out. So I knew I could conjure one up in a matter of days. So I'm going to show you my prototype for a grid control in nimbleJS in probably under 1,000 lines of code. The first thing before I get into the actual code was I went to grab some data. This is just a CSV file. I'll let you see the folder somewhere. This film.csv file is just some data about movies, and I built this quick script to store that entire CSV data file into the data string. I'm going to use that later to display data inside of this grid control, but I wanted to set things up and let you know that I had data to display. Years ago, I created a Microsoft Excel reader in C# for a company that I used to work for. And the principles behind the reader, the Excel reader, followed those of the CHIPS BitBLT rendering engine. And it's a graphics routine that copies data. It's called bit block transfer, and it copies data in a cube or in a square to form a surface or an image. Starting in the upper left hand corner and moving right step by step until you get to the width of the image, and then stepping down to the next pixel line and continuing to copy. That same principle was used to manipulate Excel grids when I originally built this algorithm. I decided to rewrite the algorithm over the weekend to use and manipulate CSV files. So the same principle of loading a CSV file into Excel or into any grid type pattern, and then being able to manipulate the columns, rows, and data inside any of the cells with a JavaScript library. So I built this class. It's exactly 247 lines of code, and that's all it does. It loads up an Excel spreadsheet. It allows you to edit, load, CRUD operations on any Excel data inside JavaScript, and it does have the ability to sort by a column or key. Once I had this, I actually had this written, most of it written. I just modified it and improved it, I guess, this weekend. So once I had this written or improved for what I'm going to do with the grid, I needed the actual grid component and renderer. So this particular class or factory is only 336 lines of code, and this is your full, basically a full grid control, written with some pretty cool events. Written for nimbleJS. So I have a project here. What I'm about to show you, I'm going to open up this empty dialog. I'm going to run it twice so you can appreciate this. Now what I'm going to show you, I'm not going to use Nimble at all, the IDE, to do this. I'm going to use the actual console of Electron, which is a Chrome V8 engine, and I'm going to build this grid. I'm going to use my libraries and build this grid manually in front of you while you watch. So as I said, the first thing we need is the data. I have it from testing this previously. I have it still in the console. So now I'm going to build the data variable. This data variable has about 1,600 elements or rows in it, and it's just a text file technically. So now I'm going to copy in or run the factory registry to register my Excel matrix reader. So by copying this piece of code directly into the console, this factory is now registered to the Nimble kernel, which is all behind the scenes, and this has absolutely nothing to do with this IDE. It's just running, it's talking directly to the operating system. And that's what I meant in my previous video about nimbleJS as an independent project or an independent application all of its own. Last but not least, we're going to bring in the grid factory by copying this code and also running it directly in the console. So now we have both factories available for use. We have a data object that has data. So we're going to initialize a grid by calling the factory object new and using the name that we've given. So we're going to create a new grid, and to prove that it's registered, the grid object was returned, and these are all of our events. So now we're going to initialize the grid. So we're going to initialize it, and here's the cool part. This is still running in an operating system, but I'm going to put this grid manually on this dialog, even though it's inside of the IDE. So by initializing the grid, I'm going to put it on form 2, which is this guy. I'm going to give it the name table 1. I'm going to take the data, which is all of the movie information. I'm going to split it by a carriage return line by line. And then these are the coordinates of the actual table. So a table should appear on the screen. It's 700 by 400 in size inside of this form. And there we are. We're now running, I'm going to move this off. We're now running the grid control that I just created, that class file that's only 360 lines of code, I don't remember. Inside this form, fully functioning and able to highlight fields. Now the features of this grid control, I can sort on a column. I can of course adjust the width of any of these columns. And as I said, it's about maybe 1,600 lines of code, so it does have virtual paging here to try to optimize and run a little efficiently. This code is not optimized. This is just the first draft of this grid control, but I am pretty pleased with how well it runs in the Nimble platform. I also am pretty pleased that as I'm doing all this, you'll notice there are no errors appearing in the console. I'll let the console sit here for a while. I can edit. Sorry, I have a breakpoint. So I can also edit. So this is all the functionality that was built inside that the grid class control under 400 lines of code. Sort, edit. Eventually, I guess I'll add the ability to edit a full line. But basically all the basic features of a grid control in under 1,000 lines of code. I wanted to just show this to you because I didn't test as much. I got sidetracked with this idea, and I decided to play around with it this weekend. And I wanted you to appreciate exactly how well the nimbleJS engine works, as well as how little code I had to create or write to get a full running grid with the virtual scrolling working. So from within, just to give you an idea, from within this lovely control, I can forms unload, form table 1. We created the way this operates is we created table 1, but it uses a surface form that will prefix FRN in the beginning of it, and I can unload the entire widget with one line of code. So let's say hypothetically, just to show you that there's no tricks involved. If I reinitialize this table with no form, it will still appear on the screen. But the idea is that because there was no form, the default drawing surface is the desktop. So we now have the same dialog fully running directly on the desktop because it's a widget. That's the beauty of the Nimble rendering service, or the rendering design, is that you can target your drawing or target where it's going to draw without a problem. The same way I unload it, one command unloads the entire widget, and you can keep working. It's an easy way to test the things that I create before I actually incorporate them into the project or in the final build. nimbleJS grid control. 2 days worth of work. It was kind of fun. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I thank you for watching.